Spoiler warning for Call of the Sea, first proposed in 2020, solved in 2023.
On June 24th, 1934, an expedition landed on an island 74 miles east of Tahiti. The island was not on any map. Those who knew about it avoided it. For Harry Everhart, an archaeology professor at Miskatonic University, that island held the key to his future. Not just academically, everything hinged on the expedition's success. He gathered 6 professionals ready to challenge the unknown and seize a prize worth life itself. But the expedition did not return. Its cargo, its crew, even the ship that carried it vanished into the darkness. This is not Harry Everhart's story, though. This is the story of Nora Everhart, Harry's beloved wife, and her journey to learn what happened to her husband. This is Call of the Sea. Nora's story doesn't start here, but it is where we meet up with her. On October 9th, about 3 months after the expedition set sail, Nora received a package by post. It contained 3 items: a ceremonial knife, a photo of Harry with the island's location, and a key marked with the initials CW. After considerable expense and a sea captain's charity, Nora finally set foot on the island that all of Polynesia avoids. For a cursed island, it makes a great first impression. Crystal blue waters, vibrant foliage, beautiful wildlife. Tourist companies would kill each other to build a resort here. Everything is serene and peaceful, even welcoming. Well, aside from the note warning that previous visitors found only death, but besides that, it's a lovely little beach. It also confirms that Nora had the right island.
Is that Harry? Harry, you were here! You were here and I found you, damn it.
You see, Harry has been on this hunt for months, possibly years. His last letter celebrated his most promising lead yet, but it was the last letter he sent. In the interceding months, Nora has been both desperate for and dreading news of his whereabouts. This beach, the expedition's landing zone, is her trailhead. It's also where we see what kind of game Call of the Sea is. And, well, it's kind of a walking sim. I wish we had a better term for that, since it used to be so pejorative. Opinion has changed, though. The model continues to yield impressive feats of storytelling. I mean, just look at this vista. There's something about being in the first person that helps immerse you in the environment. This game would be incredible in... oh, that's exciting. There's a subtler layer, too. Most of gaming could be described as do a thing to make a number go up. Score up, level up, XP up, etc. But walking sims put the gameplay into the story itself, like how Outer Wilds uses information gained on one walk to help you get through the next one, or how Exit 8 forces you to pay attention to details to progress. One could, and probably will in the comments, argue about whether a walking sim with gameplay still counts, but I'd argue back that modern genres are so blended that they're best described as combinations. And in Call of the Sea's case, the walking occurs in a kind of escape room. In every level, you will face a locked door. To open it, you'll have to gather clues to solve puzzles. And goddamn if some of these puzzles aren't absolute bastards to solve. I rarely have to look up solutions, subtle brag, but damn if this little dial didn't break me. The beach's gate is this mechanical drawbridge. We're taking some liberties with Polynesian architecture. To solve it, you'll need to locate a set of clues around the beach, discern the meaning of these unu, and input the correct symbols to lower the bridge. That will get Nora across the river, but it's not the only puzzle wanting a solution. Each area is the scene of a pivotal moment for the expedition. It'll be up to the player to piece that information together into a complete story. You'll have help, because Nora writes everything down in her journal. By the way, shout out to Out of the Blue for making this absolutely invaluable resource. You saved me so much research time. Now, Nora did know what Harry was seeking, and we'll get to that in a minute. But she was not, let's say, fully briefed. Members of his crew are familiar from his letters, but she can't put names to the faces. From the photo, it's clear the expedition at least began optimistically, so whatever happened further in. One more thing. Someone has carved Nora's name into the back of this unu, with an arrow pointing to the box containing her first solution. The box is marked CW, just like her key. Someone else is on this island, and they knew Nora was coming. Or, at least, they were on this island. If you circle back after opening the drawbridge, Nora's boat and her belongings are gone. There is no longer any way out but forwards. As we approach the expedition's base camp, remember that we never play as any of its members. Everything we know about them is derived from scraps, notes, journal entries, audio recordings.
How did you agree to return to the island then?
I need to know what happened to me.
Bits of their lives pieced together into more complete portraits. A lot of this narration is conjecture, but it's all based on information found in the game. The expedition camped in an old fishing village. There were signs it once doubled as a smuggling hideout, but no trace of the residents remained. Everyone found a temporary home and set about their jobs. It didn't take long to find something. The village they settled in abuts a ruin, some kind of well, with a stone lid too large and heavy to be moved by manpower alone. It might have been a curiosity, but not anything the expedition could explore. Bigger machinery from a bigger expedition would be required. Or that would have been the case, except for a discovery in a hidden room within Harry's hut. This square block of stone is riddled with a black liquid, referred to by the expedition as black ooze. The stuff moves and flows within the stone, and continues to do so even when left immobile. Here then was something entirely unique, and while it was not Harry's quarry, it shared that trait. When he used the block to activate a stone elevator easing the journey up to the well, he was certain he'd taken his first steps. Harry's mission was urgent, but he wasn't reckless. If there was a way to work the elevator, there must be a way to open the well. He was determined to get at its secrets, but willing to take the time needed to puzzle it out. But after weeks of doing nothing, his bored and frustrated security guard ran out of patience. Roy Granger was a Hollywood man, a stuntman loved for his good looks and his daring nature. When your job is surviving dangerous situations, you become a good man to have in one. But you may also become accustomed to things moving, well, quickly. Harry's photographer had plenty to keep her occupied with the new sights. His mechanic was building and repairing the infrastructure. His guide was keeping his distance, believing the well to be the site of forbidden rituals. With nothing on the island interested in attacking the crew, Roy was bored. Not everyone enjoys a good puzzle, after all. And like Alexander the Great, Roy was wondering if he couldn't just brute force it. By the time Nora arrives, the camp is abandoned. This is how the game will go. The expedition happened months ago. What Nora finds are its remains. Most of the equipment and personal items have been cleared out. What's left is some photos, notes, and an experiment Harry was working on. Through a telescope, Nora finds the reason for the camp's abandonment. A ship has wrecked on a nearby beach. From Harry's note, it was urgent they leave immediately, bringing only what was indispensable, so no room for mirrors, photographs, hair tonic. Actually, this cabin still looks settled into. The others are stripped bare, but this one is completely furnished with all the tenants' personal effects still on the shelves. Because as it turns out, this first leg of the expedition was also Roy Granger's last. Using the ooze-covered stone, Nora can ascend the well to find that one puzzle has been solved for her. The stone cap has been blown apart. Roy used every pound of dynamite they'd brought to crack it open. The explosion set fire to nearby foliage and equipment and killed Roy in the blast. Letters from Harry's mechanic indicate that Roy had lied to him, pretending he'd had Harry's permission. He and Roy had become friends during their short time together. Feeling responsible, he assures Harry he will never make this mistake again. But there was another consequence. Like the key used to operate the elevator, the stone cap was laced with black ooze, and that ooze splashed all over the expedition's doctor, who began to see things differently. While his recklessness cost Roy his life, it also opened a new opportunity. Within the well were several tubes leaking black ooze and a set of murals depicting a ritual wherein prisoners were subjected to submersion in the stuff, with some effect on their eyes expected. Harry experimented with the ooze in a device which, quite honestly, was probably pseudoscience. It was to no avail, however. When the shipwreck was discovered, he was forced to abandon the project for the safety of his crew. But Nora is under no such pressure and can take her time. And what she discovers at the site of the explosion surprises and alarms her. Not long after being splashed with the ooze, the doctor began to hear voices and music. His thoughts became disturbed. He moved his tent and all his equipment to the top of the well to study it more closely. In addition to the mental signs, there is a photograph of his hand now covered in dark spots. Next to it is a picture of Nora's hand. Harry's expedition isn't for personal gain or for academic glory. He's here because for years now, his wife has been deathly ill. It's some kind of hereditary disease that manifested when her mother died. Most days, Nora is bedridden, unable to so much as walk. They've seen every doctor under the sun trying to find a cure, a treatment, or just an explanation for her malady. Fed up with a lack of answers, Harry resolved to find them himself. And here, thanks to Roy's impatience and the doctor's misfortune, he has finally found a solid lead. But he also has misgivings. Like his mechanic, Harry blames himself for Roy's death. While the two weren't friends, he asserts that Roy was no one's fool. With his experience in stunt work, he should have appreciated the dangers involved in what he was attempting. Harry is afraid that something about the island clouds judgment, and that Roy may have been its victim. Most of this is depicted in the first of several letters Harry has left for Nora. Letters he had no way to send and no expectation she would read. Written for his own comfort, they are the most direct exposition we receive. They also illustrate something. This game's art design is just incredible. The tone, vibrant colors, and dynamic lighting make for incredibly beautiful designs, both for natural and artificial environments. It's no surprise since the same quality was brought to Out of the Blue's next game, American Arcadia. But it's not just the visuals. Nora is played by the incredible voice actress Cissy Jones, who would return in American Arcadia as the voice of Vivian Walton.
Oh, and best of luck, because it's 2023 out there and you're almost, 30? You don't have any employable skills, and you know nothing about the real world.
She brings so much depth and emotion to this woman searching for salvation both for her love and for herself. It's an amazing performance.
Harry hated asking his parents for money to fund this expedition. The Everharts are a wealthy Boston family, quite old-fashioned. They were never really pleased with his eldest marrying a middle-class girl.
And she's not the only one. Yuri Lowenthal's supporting performance as Harry is of equal quality, and while the rest of the crew's actors only get a few lines, they still feel perfectly cast.
Shouldn't we be listening to something, Frank?
I have assembled and disassembled it. Twice. So it should be fixed, Mr. Everhart.
Not one performance ever feels cheesy or phoned in or done to cut costs. We will be debating video games as art until the invention of the holodeck, but anyone who walks away from Call of the Sea still doubting should probably just stick to reality TV from now on. Harry didn't have time to crack the code where the ooze was concerned, but when Nora approaches the pipes, she experiences visions. Using these clues, the player can finish Harry's experiment. The lens gives Nora brief visions of some distant alien place and a constellation not visible from this world. Redrawing that constellation at the bottom of the well, using the ooze, activates it. Nora really should have seen this next part coming.
The well is filling up. That's black ooze. No. What's happening? What's happening? I'm feeling faint.
When Nora's mother died, she left her a music box. It's a family heirloom, but has been broken for as long as Nora can remember. Not long after receiving it, the dreams started. Nora dreams of herself underwater, swimming through a coral reef. Surrounding her are pieces of her life. A clock, a bookshelf, a stairwell, all embedded in the living ocean. The dream always ends with her reaching for her mother's old music box, and then waking up in terror. It's been happening for years, even on the boat ride to the island. The salty ocean air has done wonders to improve Nora's health and state of mind, but the spots on her hands and the dreams in her head remain. So when she finds herself walking alongside the basalt pillars bordering an inland river, she recognizes that this isn't her usual dream. Nora finds she can't control herself. Her body doesn't respond. It keeps marching towards the horizon, and a massive creature clinging to an ancient monolith. And then she falls into the ocean below, where she finds that she can breathe. At the end of the water, in the darkest depth, something looks back at her with eyes glowing violet. And for a moment, her hands. If the player didn't understand what kind of story this was before, they should by now. Immense godlike beings, realities beyond mortal ken, fish. We're in Lovecraft country to be sure. Call of the Sea is never closer to Lovecraftian horror than here, the wreck of the Lady Shannon. The expedition left camp in a hurry because their situation had changed for the seriously worse. The Lady Shannon was hired to bring the expedition to the island. It would then spend 3 weeks whaling in nearby waters before retrieving the expedition, or whatever was left of them. When the expedition arrived, the Shannon was a mess. Its hull had been ripped open, its innards were flooded, the wreck had been thrown onto the rocks. Their ticket home in pieces, the expedition was over. They had to focus on rescue. Maybe it's a good time to introduce the expedition's members. Formally, I mean. We already know the gist of Roy Granger. Brought into the expedition to handle dangerous situations and demolitions, it was the combination of the two that killed him. His friend was Frank Drayton, a great war veteran and a skilled mechanic capable of taking nothing and building anything from it. He's an affable soul who makes friends easily. Cassandra Ward is a reporter and photographer, likely brought to tell the story. There might be funding involved in her presence, as Harry is not there on university business. Given her keen interest in the occult and strange happenings, this expedition is right up her alley. Only one member has been to this island before. That's Teaharoa, a Polynesian serving as their guide. When he was young, he came to this island to fish, was attacked by something in the water, and was stranded for 3 days. Finally, there's the doctor, Ernest DeWitt, a dermatologist by specialty, here to see to the health of the expedition in general, but chosen more specifically for his familiarity with skin ailments. None of that should have mattered by this point. Harry was ready to find a way off the island and leave. Where the base camp had been comfortable, this beach is a makeshift residence. A set of canvas tents to sleep in, workspaces, a common cooking and dining area. From the canned food to the cobbled living quarters, it's clear the expedition's supplies are running out. No one seems to be picking up their distress call. The time to make critical choices is rapidly approaching. Harry seemed ready to make them. Until he found the organ. This massive eldritch construct was the gate and guardian to the interior of the island, its workings powered and protected by black ooze. Once found, Harry worked on this puzzle like a man possessed. He learned that the ooze's gravity-neutral properties responded to musical tones. He worked out the relationship between the organ's symbols, the tides, and the phases of the moon. It was detailed work and time-consuming. He ceased all efforts towards rescue or escape, focusing every hour on the organ. From notes left to one another, we see Frank was reaching his limit. His life was in danger, the expedition was in shambles, and he had a family back home. It was time to pull the plug. He knew Harry wouldn't abandon the organ easily, so he tried to recruit Cassandra to support him. For Cass, though, this was about more than just the story. She expresses sympathy with Harry, his need to save his wife, and so refuses to leave him alone on the island. Even if it means Frank will leave them behind, she's in this to the end. It was around this time when Dr. Ernest DeWitt snapped. As Nora explores the site, she's able to piece together the doctor's slow unraveling. Ever since his exposure to the ooze, he's become less and less stable. The crew clearly tried to help where they could, but even Frank describes him as losing his mind. He takes to wandering off, claims to be hearing things, voices, music. He can't get it out of his head. One time, Cass photographs him at the shoreline, seemingly talking to the waves. In his chambers, a handkerchief has been splashed with a mix of blood and black ooze. Something has been changing within the doctor. And as Nora reads the last of his accounts and recalls how she was nearly drowned in the stuff, she can't help fearing what will happen to her. After all, she's already seeing things moving out on the rocks. And then one night, while Frank and Harry speculate on why he can't fix Nora's music box,
No, maybe it was never meant to play music.
DeWitt, where have you been this whole time?
Oh my god.
DeWitt comes wandering out of the dark, spewing gibberish and wielding a knife, one the expedition had not seen before but which would be familiar to Nora. Before anyone can stop him, Frank is stabbed. It's not fatal, but he's injured and the crew is trapped with a madman. Lacking options, they bind him to a nearby stake. It takes all of them. But by the next morning, he's gone. The ropes are undone, and a set of inhuman footprints lead to the water. If you've never read Lovecraft's work, or those inspired by him, it can be summed up thus. Humans are ants. We may think we're at the top of the evolutionary ladder, but the truth is we're far closer to the bottom than we'd like to admit. There are beings and elder gods on and around this world who are far greater than us. Our entire civilization means no more to them than an anthill might mean to us. The only reason they haven't wiped us all out yet is because they don't care to bother. much how we won't go looking for a wasp's nest in the woods, but wouldn't hesitate to remove one built under our stairs. We persist because we've adhered to a set of rules we are unaware of and which are subject to change at any time. There is something more on this island than just the expedition, more than the villagers who lived here prior, more than the ancient civilization that lived among the ruins. They have been here the whole time, watching, mostly uninterested, until the expedition screwed up. When Nora reads the captain's log in the Lady Shannon, it tells of a massive creature spotted in the water, one the crew are certain was not a whale. This is the last entry, written the same day Roy blew up the well. The ants have begun eating the house and the owners have noticed. Who was DeWitt talking to, and where did he get that knife? Shaken, with an injured member, the crew can't simply leave now. And what else is there to do while Frank recovers but continue working on the organ? One morning, with a blast to shake the heavens, Harry succeeds. Using Harry's notes, Nora duplicates his feat and opens the gate to the island's summit. A frequent haunt of Lovecraftian work is a sense of rising dread, a feeling that something is wrong, a shape in the dark, something heard behind the walls. The protagonist usually brushes this off and rationalizes it. This is a hard mechanic to replicate in a game. Inspiring fear is easy, of course, but the more a player is exposed, the less it impacts them. And while Lovecraft's protagonists never know what they're in for, you can't trick a player into the wrong genre. Well, not easily. Which is why it's surprising for Nora to describe a lack of fear. Where Harry is fearful for his crew and his own state of mind, Nora feels a sense of calm. This island doesn't inspire any dread. Not for her. This is the highest point on the island. From here you can easily make out the massive stone diamond first seen on the shore. It's quite a hike, but the view is well worth it. This is also the site of the expedition's biggest setbacks, the most tragic of which is the loss of Frank. We can only speculate on the cause, but the most recent group photo shows Frank as having lost a lot of weight. Likely the injury from the knife, while not immediately fatal, either damaged a vital organ or allowed an infection to set in. And so the team is without their security, their doctor, or their mechanic. Their resources and their skill base grow thin. Discord is rising as well. Teaharoa is increasingly vocal about leaving. Where at first he wanted answers, now he's just hoping to get out alive. These warnings are aggressively rebuffed by Harry, who, with half his expedition dead, is desperate to salvage some meaning from it.
Listen to me. Frank lost his life setting this whole thing up, so we're not going to discuss it anymore.
The group photo shows their low spirits. Even Cass, who is front and center, no longer looks enthusiastic. And one wonders if the book she holds, a copy of Herman Melville's Moby Dick, might be a statement. Having learned from the organ, Harry prepares to repeat the experiment using makeshift speakers rigged by the late Frank. But instead of opening, the stones and columns of the temple door move erratically, causing a rock slide that crushes the expedition's tents and all their belongings. The two doors did not have the same password. In his haste, Harry had nearly gotten them all killed. When Nora arrives, the storm from earlier has eased into a gentle rain. She inspects the camp, expressing her sincere regret at Frank's death. She never knew the man, but she knew he was an invaluable friend to Harry, and that the world was a dimmer place without him. It doesn't take long to put together what they were attempting, and after solving a puzzle that took me way longer than it should have to solve, seriously all I had to do was look up, but no, she's got power running. But in trying to route it to the speakers, she falls. Which might well happen if you're trying to climb and do electrical work in the rain. Kids, let this be a lesson. When Nora comes to, she's in another vision. A very different vision. Instead of being underwater or on an island, Nora is in a desert wasteland. It looks to be a dried ocean. The bones of dead fish and bigger fish litter the landscape. As she walks, hot and dry and parched, memories assault her. She sees herself sick, feverish, desperate. Objects appear as she stumbles, her cane, her bed, all the signs of her illness, reminding her that she is still dying. Whatever reprieve she's enjoying will not last unless Harry was successful in finding her cure. She grows weak, woozy. desperate for water. And then she sees a house. Her and Harry's house in Englewood. Delirious, she asks if Harry is home before walking in. The house is entirely submerged in water. Not the way her visions usually are, with pieces of it embedded in the sea floor, but simply water everywhere. Her home is underwater. At the end of it, a sitting room decorated with photos from her and Harry's life. Their wedding, Christmas, one of the last happy photos she had with her mother before the illness took her. And in the chair, her music box, the broken one. Here, now, it plays Nora a sweet melody. When she wakes, she approaches the microphone and sings.
Was quite a show.
Within the temple, accessed from the hole breached by a rock slide, she finds where Harry was working and his next letter. It's not good news. What is happening to Nora is not a disease. It's something carried within her blood. Nora isn't dying, or at least she's not supposed to be dying. She is undergoing a transformation. Into what? Harry isn't sure. His only clues are the pelagic figures in the ancient murals and their word for the final form she will take. Water animal. So, why don't we talk for a minute about H.P. Lovecraft? Lovecraft has gone down in history as one of the most problematic classic writers. The artist was not appreciated until after his death situation. Lovecraft's life was rocky. Well, it probably felt rocky to him. Truth is, he more or less migrated from upper class to middle class, back up, and then down again, but it doesn't seem he was ever really in difficult financial straits. Rather, I think Lovecraft had a very high opinion of himself and his perspective on the world instilled by his upper class family. I'm not going to spend any more time on him. There are biographies out there, and Overly Sarcastic Productions has an amazing episode on it if you're curious. Lovecraftian horror is often identified with cosmic horror, which is the horror of man's insignificance as described earlier. But I don't think that's quite accurate. What makes a Lovecraftian horror is not the insignificance, but the revelation. Take Dracula by Bram Stoker. The vampire is present from minute 1, and the revelation of what he is happens well before the final conflict. Further, the death of the vampire is the end of the story. But in Lovecraft, the truth is often the last thing we learn, and the implications are meant to haunt us. In Rats in the Walls, the narrator goes mad when he learns the truth about his family. In Color Out of Space, the entity is revealed to still be present in the well and might soon be infecting a planned reservoir. In Cool Air, the main character learns that an air conditioner can break down at any time, leaving you at the mercy of ambient humidity. And then there's Shadow over Innsmouth. Anyone familiar with Lovecraft saw this coming from miles away. Innsmouth is a seaside town in decay. And to make a fish story short, the main character learns that Innsmouth folk have made a deal with an underwater civilization. In exchange for the occasional human sacrifice and, let's just call it fish tinder, the town gets regular deliveries of fish and gold to bolster their economy. By the time the main character Robert Olmsted arrives, most of the town's population are the offspring of these pairings. They start out human, then gradually morph into one of the fish folk, which are sometimes called the Deep Ones. Also, they're planning to take over the world and sacrifice humanity to Cthulhu. Olmsted decides he's more pro-humanity and calls the government to arrest the whole town and blow up the Deep One's city. But that is not the revelation. The revelation is that Robert Olmsted is one of these hybrids. and as the years since the Innsmouth raid go on, his metamorphosis proceeds. First struck with horror, he decides against ending his life and swims out to sea to join his people. The horror is that any one of us could have that same fishy blood. And if for a moment you weren't sure this is where Out of the Blue is going with their story, there's an Easter egg in Nora's desert vision. It's a postcard from the underwater city of Iolanthe, from her cousin Robert. In fact, it's likely the visions she's been receiving have been sent to her purposely, just as Robert's grandparents in the ocean communicated with him in his dreams. The situation is more dire, though. Robert could have remained on land as a fish person if he'd wanted. Nora has no such choice. If she doesn't finish her transformation, she will die. But if she does complete it, then she loses her humanity. Her friends, her career, her love, they'll be gone forever. And so we press forward into the step that turned Harry back, because this next road was not meant for humans to travel. No, I don't know how this happened, and neither does Nora. The Deep One's technology is a mystery. All I can be sure about is that it coated Nora with black ooze, and now she's fishy. When we look at her hands, we see the propagation of black spots from her illness. Clearly this is a progression of her metamorphosis, but it doesn't appear to be the completion of it. When she finds another arch with another handprint, she returns to her normal self. As before, Nora doesn't feel afraid. She isn't sure what she feels, but it isn't fear. A couple more dips into the water, an encounter with an ooze-powered waterway, and Nora reaches the pens, where she and we finally get some much-needed answers. A long time ago, very long ago, there was a civilization known as the Naacal. This is actually a real-life legend, much like Atlantis. Please understand that piecing together Naacal history is far more difficult than that of the expedition. We have even fewer accounts, nothing written, and time has weathered away most of the evidence. What we can assemble has to come from Harry's notes, the leftover murals, and Nora's visions. So their economy? No clue. Religious practices? No idea. Fashion? Well, yes, but the I'm a fish made of feathers look is out of date. What we do know is that the Naacal were a slave-based society. This cavern, beautiful as it is, was where families of slaves were kept. Where the temple grounds suggest beauty and opulence, the slaves lived in simple stone huts, likely with just enough food to keep them productive. Within these huts are a set of pools filled with black ooze. When Nora touches them, she receives a message, a brief on the history of the Naacal and what happened to its people. As indicated, the Naacal were a stratified society, masters and slaves. One day, a burning rock fell from the sky, bringing with it the black blood. The substance revolutionized Naacal society. They built everything with it, skipping several steps on the technological ladder and constructing wonders that would baffle modern science. But the masters wanted more. They developed a ritual wherein selected slaves had their eyes exposed to the black ooze. This granted them visions and prepared them for what lay ahead. A final ritual. One that would transform them or kill them. As Nora examines the huts, she notices a curiosity. These glyphs suggest that the water level could be raised or lowered as long as all families agreed to it. Not all slaves lived in the water, but not all of them lived entirely in the water. There were variations, half changed or changing, who could sometimes be above and sometimes below, which might explain how the arches work. These messages reach Nora through the ooze. Like a massive neural network, they allow the two greatest beings of the Deep Ones, Father Dagon and Mother Hydra, into her mind. Until now, those messages have been incomplete, subject to interpretation between beings whose brains function in very different ways. In that light, her visions make a great deal of sense. Her nightmares, her home submerged in water, are simply telling her that the water is her home. The vision of herself leaping off the land to dive into the sea is Dagon, another Lovecraftian Old One and patron of the Innsmouth cult, calling her to him. The desert vision is the most interesting to me, though. Trekking through a dry landscape littered with both the bones of colossi and symbols of her own illness, I believe this is drawing a parallel between Nora and the Deep Ones themselves. More personally, it shows what awaits Nora if she doesn't return home to the sea. Fever and death. But more broadly, this might be explaining what the Deep Ones are doing on Earth to begin with. This dried ocean with familiar architecture might be their homeworld. Unable to leave it themselves, they cast shards of black ooze out into the universe, transforming those who came in contact, those who were compatible, into deep ones themselves, all the while connecting them across the stars. The architecture suggests that the Naacal modeled their civilization after that of the Deep Ones, implying a strong influence. I can think of several reasons the Masters enjoyed transforming their slaves. Aside from just cruel entertainment, they may have found the process fascinating from an intellectual bend, and having subjects who could swim deeper and further into the ocean than a human would have a host of applications. They were too cowardly to undergo the process themselves, though, so they never understood that their cruelty was planting the seeds of their fall. Fed up and desperate, the slaves prayed to the Elder God, an uncertain figure but which seems to be the animating force within the ooze. It answered by ripping the Naacal Empire apart. By the time Nora arrives, the Masters are long dead, and the former slaves are all fully transformed. In their words, they now live forever. I mentioned that H.P. Lovecraft was a problematic figure. This isn't exactly news, but he was a very racist and sexist individual. That comes through heavily in his writing. Classist too, given that when his villains are white, they tend to be uneducated or poor. And this is our inspiration. A man whose work has carried a subtle but persistent influence into a modern world in the process of rejecting those ideas. How do we square that circle? Well, for one, he's dead, so a lot easier to ignore. For two, we can call it out every chance we get, which is exactly what happens in Call of the Sea. For starters, obviously, the Deep Ones here are depicted as survivors of institutional slavery. For seconds, we have Nora, a woman, as our protagonist. While Nora is following Harry's footsteps, she's also solving puzzles that stumped the man. She gets some extraterrestrial help at times, sure, but goddamn, even with a bit of help, the organ puzzle took me way too long, and the temple puzzle can burn in the pits of eternity. And for dessert, Out of the Blue makes nods to the struggles its characters have faced. Frank, most obviously, was unfairly rejected from an engineering school due to his race. Given that the man took a broken fishing vessel and rebuilt it into a theater speaker system like it was Legos shows what a ridiculous restriction that was. Less obvious is Roy Granger. If you read his passport, you learn his legal name is Kostas Apostolov. He likely took the name of Roy to dodge anti-immigrant sentiment in Hollywood. Lovecraft also was not a fan of immigrants. You can't ever remove an author from their work entirely. The past happened. You can't erase it, but you can refuse to celebrate it, and you absolutely should challenge it. Call of the Sea makes a point of doing exactly that. Once she solves the puzzle of the slave pens, Nora goes back to fish mode and gets taken on a roller coaster ride through the underground currents of the island. At this point, she theorizes that the creatures on the island aren't dangerous. Not to her, at least, and not inherently. They're just defending themselves from perceived attacks. The ride ends in an antechamber featuring a stone ferry and a hole in the wall through which the expedition finally found a way through. Did you forget about Harry for a moment? Well, so did Nora. In The Shadow over Innsmouth, this is where the story ended, but despite concluding that Nora's condition couldn't be averted, Harry has embraced a new hope. If Nora can transform, maybe he can too. You gotta love Harry in this moment. He loves his wife so much that when he learns she's some kind of hybrid fish monster from the depths, he resolves to go with her. Not everyone is so enthusiastic. Teaharoa has split. Harry's idea is a bridge too far, so he's going back to the beach. He's going to build a boat and take off. He'll wait a little while for Harry and Cass, but not too long. Speaking of Cass, she's also starting to crack. She's still with Harry on this, but, well, over-familiarity breeds contempt. Harry theorized that something on the island affects judgment, and that might just be the case. The ooze is in everything, after all. Even if they never touch it directly, it's still in everything. The stone, the soil, the water, maybe even the air. But the expedition is so close to finding the island's last secrets, and if Harry is right, the only chance he and Nora have. So, question. Where the hell are we? The raft brings Nora through a tunnel and into a place that makes just enough sense to be functional. The statues and murals are typical of Naacal architecture, but the moon is full where it should be new, and since when can we see the Aurora Borealis at the equator? Also, I'm sorry, but the Earth does not rotate this fast. As Nora sails in, she speculates that this place doesn't obey the laws of physics, which, duh. Humans may have set up shop here, but this is not a place for humans. This is much more akin to the world the Deep Ones originated from. I mean, they're right over there. Hey guys! On the shore lies the expedition's last campsite. The situation had turned sour. Harry has taken to bad-mouthing Cass in his letters, and Cass is taking creepy shots of Harry while he sleeps. In this last of Harry's letters to Nora, he explains his plan. To enter the sanctuary and undergo the ritual, someone with the god's blood must offer some on the altar. To achieve his goal, to become like Nora, Harry is prepared to inject himself with the black ooze, risking everything to be with her. When Nora reads this, she panics.
What are you saying, Harry? Don't you see what the black ooze does, what it did to the doctor? Are you out of your mind?
Using the knife sent to her, the knife DeWitt used to kill Frank, Nora cuts her hand and opens the way forward. Within, Nora is marked 5 times, each mark correlating to a constellation in an alien sky. She also sees murals depicting the fear and agony of the slaves doomed to transformation or death. She can feel the pain of thousands as if it were her own. But that pain is nothing compared to what she finds within the chamber itself, on a throne flooded with black ooze, seated next to his glasses, and holding her music box.
In the end, you perform the ritual. You poor fool. But why? I don't understand it. Why? You knew it. You knew it wasn't going to work.
This was happening, Teaharoa would have been hard at work dulling his machete in construction of a boat. He still doesn't know whether he'll be making the trip alone or not. He's hoping his friends see reason and that some life can be salvaged from all this death. Death and madness. The toll of Lovecraftian horror visits on its protagonists. Antagonists too, often as not. It's the price to be paid, looking for trouble with being so great that you are but an insect to them. You can't be surprised if you get squished. But if I can borrow your thoughts for a moment, I want to show you something. So this is a commercial for a critter catcher. I have one myself. I can confirm it works. No, they haven't paid me for an endorsement. The purpose of the critter catcher is to catch small creatures, insects, spiders, little pests that wander into your house. Once caught, it holds them firmly and they can be released safely outside. It is an entirely superfluous device that wastes time. It exists because we higher beings aren't always comfortable with being cosmic horrors. Sure, sometimes we are. I plan to continue swatting mosquitoes, but I don't ever want to be comfortable with that. I don't like ending something's life just because it's convenient or annoying, or assuming their lives lack meaning because they are so much smaller than I. We are to them as Dagon is to Harry. Lovecraftian horror asserts that any being that great and powerful would care nothing for the lives beneath it. But is that true, or is he just projecting? Isn't it possible that the greater your comprehension of the universe, the more respect you might have for even its smallest moving parts? Well, let's take a look at the actions of the Deep Ones, starting with what happened years before the expedition. The first to meet them was Teaharoa. He was fishing near the cursed island when something in the water attacked him. He got a scar for it and swam up to the beach. There he remained for 3 days until a stranger arrived and took him back to Tahiti without a word. Clearly, someone is watching the island. Descendants of the Naacal? Probably. Not every slave had the god's blood, and not all that did underwent the full transformation. But with the Naacal civilization destroyed, the remaining population would have filtered back into the world. Over thousands of years, surely that blood could end up in an art teacher from Massachusetts. The Deep Ones live forever. They have long memories. They are likely watching from their underwater city for new arrivals, keeping contact with a few surface dwellers in the know. They try to ward off those who don't belong, but if someone is stranded, they will send help. That might be for their own good, as long-term exposure to the ooze is not great for ordinary people. The Lady Shannon? The timing is suspicious, of course, but then the Shannon was a whaling vessel. They might have tried to raise and catch Dagon himself, and, well, that wasn't ever going to go well, was it? How about Dr. DeWitt? The man was bound to a pole, and the tracks leave little doubt who took him. Had he died? Did they drown him? Did they change him? We have no idea, and no way of knowing. But if they were in a murderous mood, they didn't have to stop with DeWitt. They could have killed the whole expedition as it slept on their doorstep. Maybe, sad to say, they had seen this before and knew it could only end one way. And how about Nora? Well, Nora is one of them, and given how long her dreams have been going on, they have been trying to get a hold of her for years. They did the same with her mother, but she never got the message. The closer Nora gets, and the more contact she has with the ooze, the more clearly they come through. These strange and ominous, powerful and terrifying beings are doing what they can to save her from a painful death. They want her to join them, to live with them forever. The Deep Ones are not pure pacifists, but they don't delight in human suffering, and they have no reason to wish us harm. And that becomes clear in Harry's last encounter with them. Through a mirror made of black ooze, they are finally able to send him one clear message. A message on a human level, directed not to humanity in general, but to the man who has loved, supported, and is trying so hard to save their lost sheep.
Haha Folgafen. She is our daughter.
One sentence. Nora is their daughter. Harry is not their son. The ritual could never work as Harry envisioned. He isn't at fault, and he isn't unworthy. He simply isn't one of them. He can no more become a Deep One than an ant can become a butterfly by finding an empty cocoon. And that is why Harry did not die in the ritual. Cass did. Cassandra Ward, the only member to survive this far, outwardly the most dedicated to Harry's cause. The truth is, Cassandra has been chasing this for her entire life. As a reporter of the occult, she's encountered stories literally right out of Lovecraft. The vanishing of Robert Soydam, the disappearance of the Gardner family, the cult of Cthulhu. That book she carries, Moby Dick, isn't a reference to Harry's obsession, it's to hers. She has been on the trail of the impossible for years, but always arrived after the fact. This is the first time she's been on the scene, the first time she's had a chance to touch this world with her own hands. This is why she has continued to support and encourage Harry through every death and hardship, why she harangued Teaharoa into leading them to the sanctuary, and why she murdered Frank Drayton. Yes, really. In light of everything so far, it would be out of character for the Deep Ones to just hand a weapon to a man with no grasp on reality. But the smoking gun is within the White Whale. Cass's copy of Moby Dick has been carved out to hold the knife. She's had it since before this expedition was even announced. Cass has been seeking this island, trying to find a way here, and needing someone who could get her safely past its challenges. Now that she'd found it, she wasn't going to let anyone change Harry's mind. And Nora is smart enough to figure this out. It's all too perfect. The glasses, the music box, the key marked CW. It's too much like the scavenger hunts Harry used to hold for their friends at parties. Nora knows him too well. He wouldn't throw his life away on a fool's gamble. It was Cass, having shot Harry and left him for dead, who entered the sanctuary. It was her body on the throne, the final payment for her contribution. Harry survived, and concocted this scheme. He left with Teaharoa, and from Tahiti, mailed Nora the package which led her to follow the expedition's trail. Why did he do it? Why not go back to her, lay it all out on the table, enjoy a cruise together on the way to saying goodbye, safe in the knowledge that even if this is their final parting, they made the most of their time and ultimately saved Nora's life? Well, because Nora wasn't going to break up the Everhart twosome. She wouldn't stop being the point to his counterpoint. Harry meant as much to Nora as she did to him, and she couldn't hurt him by leaving him behind. So Harry put together a scheme to fake his own death and put her in the sanctuary at once, guaranteeing that she would live on and become who she was truly meant to be, unshackled by her love for him. But that isn't the way this works. Nora has to choose to transform. It can't be forced on her. She has to stand between two destinies, her past in her hand, and decide which future to give her heart to. Abandon all that she knows for eternal life? or embrace a quicker end with the people she loves. Of course, it's not really Nora's choice. It's ours, the players. It's up to us to weigh everything that's happened, everything we know about Nora, and choose for her.
We had a really good life. But that's not my life anymore, is it, Harry? Not after what I've been through on this island. Not after all I've found out about myself. I can't fool myself anymore. I have to accept what I truly am and leave you behind. I'm going back home.
I picked what I thought was right. Regardless of which choice you make, Nora validates that choice. If you return to Harry, the two move to the coast. They buy Nora a few more good years, but the illness does return and she eventually succumbs to it. But I could not picture Nora doing this, and I attribute that to two moments in the game: her vision of the desert and her journey through the underground currents. In the desert, she tells us exactly how she feels about what her illness has done to her, how she's been a prisoner in her bed, how she would rather die than use her cane again. Even more telling is her feelings when underwater. She feels the complete opposite of illness, full of life and joy in a way she never was before. For Nora, the last 2 days on the island have made more sense to her than her entire life beforehand. I can't imagine that Nora would return to that. Harry has given her his blessing to go forward, never mind the cost to him, never mind that he'll never truly know what happened to her. He wants her to be alive and to be happy, and she will never have that lying in a sickbed, slowly fading away. That said, her words as she ascends to her new form are a bit haunting. She bids Harry farewell and describes a pleasant sense of forgetting, leaving everything behind, connecting to thousands of minds through the Black Ichor, one of which is the Elder God. Perhaps becoming who she was meant to be meant losing who she was. I still think it was the right choice. This will always be one of my favorite games. I know I didn't talk about them much, but the puzzles were actually quite good, varied, and a lot of fun. Not you, you go to hell. The incredible writing and stellar voice acting make it easy to fall in love with these characters and to care what happens to them. I was genuinely anxious climbing through the wreck of the Shannon, sad to learn that the expedition had cost Frank his life, and truly dreading what I would find within the sanctuary. Out of the Blue seized on the Lovecraftian style and dared to challenge its cliches on every front. Somehow, some way, they wrote a truly incredible Lovecraftian love story. And that is an achievement to be proud of. Sadly, no matter which choice Nora makes, the game ends on a somber note. We are forwarded 10 or 20 years into the future. Harry Everhart is now the Dean of Archaeology at Miskatonic. He remarks on his regret, that he had lied to Nora, if only once. Since she left him, whether through death or transformation, he has had no joy or light in his life. All that is left to fuel him is his work. True love stories don't end with a wedding. They end with a funeral. Or at least that was supposed to be the end, but in the process of writing this script, Out of the Blue dropped a bomb. Call of the Sea is getting a sequel, and this one alternates between two protagonists. The first is Harry, the second is Evangeline Drayton, Frank's daughter. Its title is Call of the Elder Gods, and you'd better believe it's on my wish list. Thanks for playing, everyone.